So if you had just one word to describe the church, would it be unified? Stick around, we'll talk about it. We're here to study the Bible. We're here to study the Bible. We're here to study the Bible. Might get us in trouble, cause we're being intentionally provocative with our intros. In our last video, we introduced what scholars refer to as the high priestly prayer, or others as the farewell prayer, because it serves as a bookend to Jesus' teaching in John 14 through 16, where he has his disciples in the room and he's sort of telling them what's about to happen, and he's giving them like his last instructions, his farewell instructions, his last lecture, if you will. And in John 17, he moves to a time of prayer, which is great. We rarely see Jesus in prayer throughout the Gospels, but here we get a pretty extended example of that. And in the first section, he prays for himself, which is what we looked at in the last video. In the more dominant section of this prayer, he prays for his disciples, the people in the room around him, for what's about to happen. He says, I'm leaving, and I've been protecting them, but Father, now can you step in and protect them as I'm going? And he's sort of praying very specifically for his disciples and his followers that were there in the room and that were in that first century. Now, I don't want to talk about that, because the thing that captures my attention most in this prayer, and perhaps this is a bit selfish, but it's the last bit, where Jesus moves on to pray for his church, the followers of the followers. He says, I ask not only on behalf of these, my disciples, but also on behalf of those who will believe in me through their word. And the Bible, it's rare that it actually addresses us specifically. Now, don't get me wrong, the Bible is written for us. There's things that we can learn from the Bible, specifically the gospel. I mean, there's lots of really important things, but the Bible was not written to us. It was written to ancient audiences, both in the Old Testament context and in the New Testament context, and we kind of have to go back and extrapolate what it is that we can gain from that and apply it effectively. Now here in this text, however, it's focused on us, and it says that he's praying for us that we might all be one, that the church, that the followers of the followers would be united. He says, as you, Father, are in me and I am in you, may they also be in us, so that the world may believe that you have sent me. N.T. Wright wants to cut through all of it and say, this is the point. The result of this will be that the world will see and know that this kind of human community, united across all traditional barriers of race, custom, gender, or class, can only come from the action of the Creator God. It's so beautiful. But is it happening? There was a study done some years ago now in a book called Unchristian, where the Barna Group surveyed a lot of people that were outside of the church, and they asked them how to describe the church as a people. And they came up with 6 top attributes or characteristics that would define the church as they knew it, the people on the outside of the church looking in. Unified was not on that list. In fact, the top 6 characteristics or attributes of the church were hypocritical, overly evangelistic, meaning that it was all about getting people saved. It was like do you know where you'll go when you die? Here's a tract, that sort of thing. The church was also described as anti-gay, as sheltered, people that were attempting to withdraw and not interact with the surrounding culture, that we were overly political, and there's some overtones there of a certain brand of politics, and that the church was judgmental. So for people on the outside of the church looking in, unified was not necessarily the dominant characteristic or even one of the top 6 characteristics that they would have used to define who we are as followers of Jesus. Yet Jesus prays that we may all be one. And so that when the world sees us, they might believe that you, God, have sent Jesus. But this isn't happening. And I think that one of the reasons why I'm drawn to this particular section in the prayers, because I'm mad about that most of the time, both because I have participated in it and I have been an object of exclusion myself. We see things that divide the local church: race, gender, class. We also see theological differences between individuals and communities where they become ostracized because of the things that they believe. So TRP, what is our job in all of this? What is it that we are being asked to do here? First, I would say that we continue to fight for unity, perhaps especially with those who disagree with us, for those who think that we are the crazy ones on the outskirts of what traditional Christianity is. We fight for unity and we love those who think differently than we do. Our journey is not complete, and we hold some of our theological positions with open hands because we recognize the change that has taken place in our lives prior to and in the midst of our faith. We ditch the attitude of superiority in these relationships, and instead we walk in humility and servanthood, and at times that is very difficult. We use familial language to talk about the family of God, brothers, sisters, siblings. We use this language to remind ourselves that we are all image bearers of the Most High God, even when we are really heated with others for the things that they might be saying or thinking or the exclusion that is happening. But while we are attempting to fight for unity in the midst of that, we also must fight for inclusion. We fight for those on the margins, the poor and the oppressed. We fight against racism and white supremacy. We fight against misogyny and the roles that we play in some of these more dominant ideologies in America. We fight against hatred. We fight against arrogance. We fight against playing judge and jury. We fight against deciding who gets a seat pulled out for them at the table. We fight against deciding who's in and who's out. At the end of this prayer, Jesus concludes. He says, "Righteous Father, the world does not know you, but I know you, and these know that you have sent me. I made your name known to them, and I will make it known, so that the love with which you have loved me may be in them, and I in them." So TRP, what is our job? Our job is to let the love of Jesus transform us each and every day. Our job is to love when it's hard, when it costs us something, when we become the outcast, when we become the marginalized, maybe because of some of the things that we believe or the way that our faith works itself out in practice. We love because the love of Jesus is in us and we can do no other. We fight for unity, but we also fight for inclusion. And our goal and our hope is that the world might be able to look in and see how the radical love of Jesus has so transformed us, that we might be able to provide an image, a small image perhaps, of what Jesus looks like to the world. A radical, loving, sacrificial, servant leader. And may we have the strength to be that, to embody that, to enact that, even when it hurts. We're going to throw the words of this beautiful and rich prayer up on the screen. We would encourage you guys to think about it, to meditate upon it, and just to take a few moments to wrestle with what it is calling us to do and be.